Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's see what we got here. It says, does Kamala Khan Miss Marvel need better stories? Well, yes, but let's see what the mail says. To Sir P. Perchington III, with all the hype around Miss Marvel in the past few years, I decided to try reading some of the stories with my daughter. As a longtime Marvel fan, there is something that I've constantly noticed about Miss Marvel's career: lack of great stories. I personally like many of the aspects of Kamala Khan. The idea of a fangirl becoming a superhero is a fun one, full of potential. The idea of someone whose family are immigrants fits with the cultural themes that have been around since the start of the superhero genre. The idea that her culture and religion stop her from enjoying activities and food that her friends enjoy also makes her more relatable to a number of newer readers and helps others sympathize with her situation. Agree with all that. Her comics are even constantly good. But that's the problem. They're just constantly good, never great. Can the average Kamala Khan fan name one great story that she participated in? Can they name one recurring villain that stands out? Compare this to the Fantastic Four, that has had at least 4 excellent stories in their first 10 issues. We're talking about the new Ryan North series. I am not there with you, but that's okay. To each your own. Or compare her to Spider-Man. Wait a minute, you meant the first 10 issues back in the 60s, I think. Okay, that's what I think you're saying there. Because I'm like, what? Anyway, sorry. Or compared to Spider-Man, who at least 5 classic villains appear in his first 10 issues. When looking back to Miles Morales as Spider-Man, he had some solid stories, dealing with his uncle, learning the ropes in a continuity that was recovering from a bad event. He had a chance to meet the original Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and even had a small but subtly significant role in Secret Wars. And when looking at the early stories of Damian Wayne and John Kent, there are some great adventures they're involved in. R.E.P., Batman and Son, the Morrison's Batman and Robin run, Tomasi's Batman and Robin run, Superman Lois, Super Sons, Jurgen's Action Comics, Tomasi's Superman run, etc. Personally, I think that Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel, is a great character with a chance to be one of Marvel's evergreen heroes. But I think she needs some excellent stories to achieve this, not just those that are above average. Maybe I'm missing something. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter. And so I agree. Let's go back up to the top here, because you said something that I think gets glossed over a little bit, in that the makeup of Miss Marvel, in terms of kind of you described it really, really well. The family as immigrants, it does fit with kind of what we see in other superheroes, including Superman. Just that dynamic. It depends on how you play it off, of course. The idea that the culture and religion stop her from enjoying food and the things that others, that creates that tension, that unfairness that can play out in the character. The fangirl becoming a superhero, all that kind of stuff is the recipe for a solid, good character. When you break it down that way, absolutely. The challenge is kind of, as you say, it's in the execution. I think G. Willow Wilson, when she put Miss Marvel together, I think did a good job with that structure. But I also think, speaking from a little bit of insider knowledge, that was basically forced to have the character operate in a silo. The character also came about during the Inhumans attempt, where they were trying to stand up that part of the world. And so as a result, you got, almost a conflict. And I know this bothered some of the creative team, where you have this character who's a fangirl, and very naturally, she now has the abilities to potentially meet a Spider-Man or somebody like that. But when they do those issues, they have to play it off as kind of almost out of continuity, silliness. She meets Wolverine, but it's played more for jokes than truly taking advantage of this fangirl meeting one of her heroes when she's at that same level kind of place. It's just a very different way that it gets approached. And so if you just kind of look at kind of how the character has evolved and what can be done, there's never, it's like you say, there's never been the excellent story. And it is critical for any character, any comic, to have these moments that you remember. There's a reason why it's been, 50 years almost? God, 70. The Dark Phoenix saga gets brought up by X-Men all the time, because it was a powerful, moving, impactful, you remember it story. And it helped. I mean, the reality is Wolverine, Cyclops, several of the main characters, had huge moments there. Wolverine falling into the sewers, and saying, now it's my turn, the stuff of the Hellfire Club. I mean, the amount of careers, if that's the way you would put it, of X-Men characters that launched from that event and crystallized in people's minds was huge. It was a big event that people remember. Similarly, my mistake aside, the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, and a lot of these books, in their first 10 issues, put out major villains that would go on to be, part of the rogues gallery for the next 50 years. And if, I've asked this question before, it's part of the why I think villains are so critical to comics. If you look at Miss Marvel, who are Miss Marvel's arch villains? Who's Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers' arch villain? They've kind of tried to make, it's like, well, this one Kree person, but there isn't one, is the problem. If you go to the Fantastic Four, who's the Fantastic Four arch villain? Doctor Doom. Spider-Man, Green Goblin. Superman, Lex Luthor. Batman, the Joker. Daredevil, Bullseye could go there. You can go. I think if you look at the characters and you can very quickly name the villain, the very core villain for them, like without even thinking about it, that's an indication the hero and the stories have been established and things are going. Iron Man as a character has struggled, and this video for another time, but as a character, went huge in the MCU, largely because of Robert Downey Jr.'s kind of personality and everything else. But, for the comics, anybody who's in comics, anybody in Marvel will tell you that they struggled with Iron Man. It was a title that, had a long life and everything else, but it never seemed to get to the same point as some of these others. Well, I'll give you this example. Who's Iron Man's arch villain? They probably have some names, but I'll bet it was harder for you to think of that than Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Fantastic Four. I'll bet it was harder. Now try this, the X-Men. Who's the X-Men's arch villain? Well, for years, you probably would have said Magneto. And then you might have gotten into, the Marauders, Mr. Sinister, Apocalypse. You'd have other names. Who's the X-Men arch villain now? Trump supporters. No, Orcus. I guess you need that dynamic, and generally, I'm talking about the villains here, but there's a story that goes along with it. So for Miss Marvel, who's the villain? Where's the big story? Because I do believe that given the character, the makeup, the different aspects of it, what can be done, if suddenly you had a 6-part story, a 6-issue big arc, some major villain. Either one that was new and brand new created, but actually a good one that sticks, not a joke. The other problem with a lot of the villains today, which you talked about, is they make them, either random faceless dude who's a racist, or it's crazy like I have toys and those toys can rob banks. I just described the toy man, but anyway, the villain quality is low. So who is, when do you have that happen? The flaw in Miss Marvel, and the flaw in, quite frankly, a lot of these characters, I think Miles was a good example, because Miles had a better go of it. Not a great one, though, but at least better. And you did have the dynamic where, you have like the uncle, the Prowler, and this is going to, be an issue. And, it's that he's got somebody in his family who's evil, and what conflict is that going to create? What's funny about that is, that story for Miles was not an amazing story, but it was still powerful enough to actually be part of the guiding force of the movie. So when you get it even mostly right, you can leverage it to do pretty amazing things. The challenge with Miss Marvel is if we go to, that TV series, do you remember the villain? Do you remember any of the conflict? Well, the reality is Disney leaned on this idea of fangirls got powers. And that's really the only thing we've thought through. The rest is like, I don't know, we got to put some conflict in there somewhere, maybe some time travel, I guess. And I considered India for a while, maybe, okay. But that simply playing off a personality trait, fangirl for powers, is not enough. You have to create that conflict, create that story. And that is the problem with a lot of these characters. Again, you should be able to name either the big moment, the big character, the big opponent quickly. If I want to fast forward a little bit to the next generation of Marvel heroes, want to play this game? Who's America Chavez's arch villain? Kate Bishop? Anybody? Yeah, Wicked and Hulkling. Who's the arch villain? I don't know. That there aren't these big memorable stories, and if there aren't these big memorable stories, and it's just average, kind of like the writer suggested, it doesn't go anywhere. Again, it's a solvable problem, but and it's not as simple as like, well, just write an amazing story. Got to put yourself in the position to. As I said, one of the things I think that Wilson faced with with Miss Marvel is when you say, create this new character, put some time into it. P.S., they're going to need tie into this Inhumans thing that we haven't really baked fully. And P.S. again, we're going to also, you can't really interact with other parts of the Marvel Universe because they're doing other things. And so keep it combined. And by the way, we want to appeal to a new audience. So maybe don't do any of the things we're doing in the other books anyway, because that'll keep you more free. And good luck. Good luck indeed. Thanks for listening.